What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy. Welcome back to some more Bible reading. So, we've got Genesis chapter 39 lined up. This seems to be trailing off of chapter 37, really. 38 was a bit of a sidetrack, just to keep the timeline consistent, I guess. But we're going back to Joseph and his whole situation now that he's in Egypt. Somewhat far away from his family. Because, his brothers didn't like him and decided to sell him off to tradesmen who were headed down to Egypt, or traders who were headed down to Egypt. If you say tradesmen, you might think of woodcrafters or metal workers or something like that. I mean people who traded things. Anyway, yeah, so let's just kind of dive into this here and see what happens with Joseph. Chapter 39, verse 1. When Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Okay, next paragraph's looking kind of long, so I will pause there for a second. We kind of already knew this. I think that's pretty much what it said at the end of chapter 37. But in any case, Potiphar's kind of an important dude, so at least Joseph managed to get somewhere, in the service of an influential person. And that's going to be significant later, trust me. Anyway, verse 2. I may cut off this paragraph partway through just because it's that long. But anyway, verse 2. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. This pleased Potiphar, so he soon made Joseph his personal attendant. He put him in charge of his entire household and everything he owned. Okay, so similar to Jacob when he was with Laban, Joseph is basically being blessed with success from God, and that in turn is giving success and prosperity to in this case, Potiphar. In Jacob's case, it was Laban who was reaping the benefits. But because of this, Potiphar's like, okay, well, if this dude's really successful at everything he does, let me put him in charge of some big stuff. Because if that succeeds, then there's even greater benefits. So, let's move on to verse 5 and see what else happens. From the day Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property, the Lord began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. All his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops and livestock flourished. So Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. With Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing, except what kind of food to eat. Okay, I'm finding that a rather amusing note. Worrying about what food to eat. But, I don't think it was so much trying to say that he had to worry so much as, that was the only thing he really needed to even think about. So, anyway, continued success, further advancement. This is kind of the way a lot of, big businesses run, or at least how they are supposed to run. You do well at the lower ranking stuff, then you get promoted to do some higher ranking stuff. You do well there, you get promoted again to even higher ranking stuff, and so on and so forth. That's not always how it works in reality, but still, I mean, again, the idea kind of goes back to what I said before, where it's like, well, if somebody's successful in something, then why not leave them in charge of more things? Hopefully they'll be successful with those things, and then there will be even more benefits. In fact, there are some parables Jesus spoke that hinted at this very thing, come to think of it. Something to the effect of, he who is faithful with a little will be given charge over much. Something to that effect. The wording, of course, differs. But anyway, all right, let's move along before I keep rambling on a tangent. That was... Duck on it. I always get distracted by these, end of paragraph that's not the end of a verse kind of things. Oh, well. Verse 6b, I guess. Joseph was a very handsome and well-built young man, and Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. "Come and sleep with me," she demanded. But Joseph refused. "Look," he told her, "my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God." Notice that last sentence. He says it would be a great sin against God. Not even mentioning, I mean, he did mention in the previous sentences, but his main concern is what God would think of it. Not what his earthly master would think of it, but what God would think of it. But in any case, Joseph does not want to mess up what he's got going, because he realizes that, relatively speaking, he's in a good position. He's in charge of a great many things. So anyway, but again, his greatest concern is doing something that God would not approve of, which obviously sleeping with another man's wife, not something God generally approves of. So anyway, verse 10. She kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, but he refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of her way as much as possible. One day, however, no one else was around when he went in to do his work. She came and grabbed him by his cloak, demanding, "Come on, sleep with me." Joseph tore himself away, but he left his cloak in her hand as he ran from the house. Okay, so she goes from asking to insisting, and basically from insisting to not even just demanding, but trying to physically coerce. So she's clearly unfaithful, or at least desiring to be unfaithful to her husband. Anyway, but Joseph is still trustworthy and doesn't do anything in the situation. He basically runs out of there as fast as he can. So fast, in fact, that he leaves his cloak behind. Anyway, verse 13. When she saw that she was holding his cloak and he had fled, she called out to her servants. Soon all the men came running. "Look," she said, "my husband has brought this Hebrew slave here to make fools of us. He came into my room to rape me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream, he ran outside and got away, but he left his cloak behind with me." Okay, so not only is she unfaithful relationally, she's also a big fat liar. But a trail of sin covering up sin, those things kind of happen. But she mentioned screaming. I guess it's implied that screaming was screen to her servants. Had anybody been closely watching, they could have verified that no, that's not how this happened. He ran first, and then you screamed. But whatever. It was a close enough lie that I guess, since it already said nobody was nearby, it would have been hard to either prove or deny. Anyway, verse 16. She kept the cloak with her until her husband came home. Then she told her story. That Hebrew slave you've brought into our house tried to come in and fool around with me, she said. But when I screamed, he ran outside, leaving his cloak with me. Okay, so now she's perpetuated the lie not only to her servants, but to her husband, who otherwise would have been completely trusting of Joseph, had been completely trusting of Joseph up until this point. But I think many of us would admit, if we really thought about it, that there are certain issues where our line of trust would pretty much immediately be crossed. Like, even if in most things we would trust a particular person, there are certain issues that if it seemed like they crossed that line, that we still wouldn't really trust them, despite past experiences. Anyway, alright, verse 19. Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story about how Joseph had treated her. So he took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. Before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and over everything that happened in the prison. The warden had no more worries because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. So, perhaps sleeping with his wife was one of those lines for Potiphar where it's like, yeah, no, I catch even a whiff of you messing this up. I don't care how much I trust you otherwise. I don't trust you with that. So he put Joseph in prison. But much like how things had been for Joseph in Potiphar's house, Joseph just worked hard, did what was right, was given favor by God, and he gets put in charge of things in the prison. This must not have been a very, top security prison, if it would allow things like that. But, quote, the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. So, I guess it was more so to do with the warden and his perception of Joseph than anything else. But anyway, that's actually where we leave off this chapter. Kind of a short one. So, TLDR, Joseph, does well, is successful, gets to a high rank, but then his master's wife just wants to sleep with him, and despite his best efforts, she manages to convince other people that he slept with her. And so Joseph gets thrown in prison, but he just keeps approaching things the way he had approached them the whole time he was in Potiphar's house. And so he becomes successful and well-liked, gains some privilege, and there we have it. Except, now he's privileged in prison. Anyway, next chapter is going to continue along with that, and The fact that he's in the prison will become an important note later. But for now, that's it. So, yeah, as always, like, share, subscribe, click the bell, all that good stuff. Just look down in the description, really, for all the info you need on keeping track of my channel and my social media pages and all that good stuff. And, of course, leave comments down below with any thoughts that you have. As I've stated before, this, will eventually work its way to where I am live streaming this kind of stuff. And maybe I'll have comments in the chat to work off of as I'm recording this stuff. So that might give me even more to talk about. More questions to answer and consider and work through as I'm doing these readings. So that will very likely in turn also make these videos a bit longer. But I mean, hey, it's part of the reason I wanted to do this in the first place. Or one of the things that I really kind of hope that people can gain from this is, a better understanding of what's happening in the Bible, why it is even relevant for us, what we could learn from it, any help with understanding things related to the Bible. So anyway, yeah, that's it for now. I hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next video. But until then, stay cool, people.